Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, and my colleague, Russell Berger, both attorneys at Offit Kurman. And today we are talking about a new law in Maryland, a new Wage Transparency Act involving pay stubs. So we've talked about wage transparency a couple of times on OK at Work in a couple of different contexts. There's a lot of different laws that have been going into effect as of late around different disclosures that people have to make around wages. And there's been a lot of movement just kind of in the space around wage transparency on what people are getting paid and putting that to the outside. Well, this one is more on what's the company conveying to their employees. Are they providing their employees enough information regarding how they're being paid, what that looks like, what deductions are? So Russell, what are some things with this new law that employers should be keeping in mind?
Yeah, so what this new variant of the law does is, this is not really dissimilar to what exists in other states as well, but there's a couple components to it. First, there is notice upon hire. So there's a notice requirement that when you hire an employee, you provide them certain basic information, like rate of pay, what the pay schedule is, and what the leave benefits are at the time that you hire them. So so that an employee who comes in has that detail as opposed to just getting oh, my salary is X. In addition, there are certain requirements with respect to what goes on the pay stub, and that pay stub, and obviously a lot of businesses do that virtually, it's on a portal somewhere, and it's not actually handed out. Doesn't matter. There's still an electronic or paper pay stub. There are requirements about what has to go on that. So they're not necessarily earth-shattering or surprising requirements. There are things like, well, we need to know the employer's name and their address and the phone number and a bunch of detail about what hours are being worked and what's being paid and what other bonuses are being paid and at what rate of pay and what are the deductions and what are they for and how much, and have line items for each of those. So it may not require a whole lot of change when it comes to pay stubs, and the Department of Labor in Maryland is going to publish a form for that and a template that employers can use. I suspect that most larger payroll companies are going to adopt that or some version of that themselves anyway. So it's probably more of a conversation with your payroll provider to make sure that they are covered and they're compliant with this law. Whereas I think what you give people at the time of hire is going to be more on you as the employer than the payroll provider. But you're going to work with your payroll provider. But one of the important takeaways here is whether it's something within the payroll system or not. You as the employer are the party that's going to be held responsible if it gets messed up. And under the new Maryland law, that's a $500 per employee penalty that you could be looking at.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to take a look at your payroll practices and take a look at what employees are receiving and checking all of these things. So exactly to your point, Russell, it's going to fall on you. It's also just a good time to always do a checkup. And this is not, there's other states that are either have these types of laws or will at some point, just given the fact that this has been a hot topic. Wage transparency generally has been a hot topic for a little while now. So just something to be keeping in mind, taking a look at, and then it's always just a good time to kind of see how it's displaying, how our bonus is displaying. Are they accurate? Are things accurate? Because a lot of times when we have a client come to us and they've been sued for a wage complaint, or they've got some kind of employee issue, sometimes they start digging into these documents and they realize, like, hey, wait, I didn't realize this looks like this. Why does it look this way? Or this isn't quite accurate. And so it's good to be auditing these things regularly. Of course, you want to rely on a payroll company, or you want to be able to outsource a lot of things, but it's still going to fall on you. A lot of these employment law matters, so you still want to be checking on them periodically and making sure everything's looking appropriate and accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, keeping those different forms of compensation separate on a pay stub and having them as separate line items is really, really important when you're dealing with non-exempt employees that could be working overtime, because there are different forms of compensation may or may not be required to be factored into overtime wages, and then the formula for how you do that could vary. So, having those things broken out and easily trackable, actually, I think is a best practice anyway.
Yeah, definitely important. And this is a good time to check it out. Well, have a good one, Russell. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.